So really, it's all about how you use AI. You can use it to enhance your cognitive functioning and boost your learning, or you can use it in a way where you're substituting your thinking and you are going to harm your brain.
If you fall into that trap that you just allow AI agent to do something for you, that eventually it's just nonsense.
If AI can do something for us faster, we're probably gonna use AI wherever we can.
Keep up with competitors, keep up with expectation, keep up with everyone. And if this becomes 24/7, then yeah, honestly, it's not the work and life I want to have.
Thank you so much for coming to both of you. We are here with Nordic Business Forum, and I'm Olivia, your host from NBF. And I have two experts here with me today. You are experts on AI, brains, and generally how to make use of both of them. Moisala and Kaspar Korjus. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And well, AI has kind of entered our lives by storm. It's happened all so fast that we haven't really had the time to think about how this impacts our brain and especially cognitive functioning. Many of our listeners are professionals, some might be students, and many also have children in school who are now learning to use AI or using AI as part of their studies. So this does impact a large portion of people. Now, according to some recent research, as I understand it, the use of AI and especially large language models does have some consequences on our ability to think and make decisions. This is twofold. First of all, the thinking, cognitive abilities part, and then the relinquishing of our decision-making power to AI. And what kind of consequences can this have on a larger scale, both to the individual and then to the society? But today, we need to narrow this down a little bit more. So we're going to discuss how to not let AI rot your brain, you could say, in the professional context. So how do we avoid these negative consequences, and how can leaders and professionals really enhance their intellect with the use of AI rather than outsourcing the intellect that they have? First, I want to start with our expert on the brains and knowledge work side of things, Moisala. You are a psychologist with a PhD in neuroscience, and you focus on working with professionals on how to adopt more brain-friendly working habits in the digital age. My first question for you is, could you tell us about the recent findings on how AI and LLMs impact the brain?
So there's no really solid peer-reviewed scientific evidence that the use of AI produces any, let's say, long-term structural changes in the brain. So we can't say, based on the knowledge that we now have, that using AI would lead to any kind of rewiring of how the brain works. Most of the studies that have been done so far have been on this phenomenon called cognitive offloading. So just outsourcing some parts of information processing or thinking or decision-making to AI. And this is not necessarily always a negative thing for the brain, that we do this reduction of mental effort. And there's actually some positive studies, especially from the academic world. We see that students that use AI can actually improve their, at least short-term academic outcomes. They feel more motivated when they're studying because, you can use AI as kind of an extra tutor to help you learn. So there's positive results. They're not all negative. The more kind of worrying results we see from studies of people over-relying on AI, so always going to AI first to do their thinking for them. We see that in some studies this has been associated with more shallow information processing, less critical thinking skills, worse memory performance. There was that study or report from MIT Media Lab last year where they showed there was less connectivity between different brain areas when people were using AI to write essays instead of doing it for themselves. So really, it's all about how you use AI. You can use it to enhance your cognitive functioning and boost your learning, or you can use it in a way where you're substituting your thinking and you are going to harm your brain.
Yeah, we're definitely going to go to the direction of how to use it the correct way. But before that, could you give some examples from work life or how people use it the ineffective way?
I think the wisest way to use AI from cognitive neuroscientist perspective is to think first and prompt second. So always go through that initial thinking phase and problem solving phase in your own brain by yourself, and then take that material to AI and ask it to improve or elevate or ask more questions or challenge you. And that's a way to really enhance your cognitive functioning, is to use AI as kind of a co-thinker with you. So I think the problem is if you always go to AI first, that can lead to just looking for quick, easy answers from AI instead of doing the hard thinking work yourself. And I hate making this analogy between the brain and a muscle because that's a little bit inaccurate, but at the same time, there's some truth to it. So the brain does need mental exercise to become stronger. So if we're doing a lot of outsourcing and replacing thinking with AI, that's when we see cognitive atrophy happen.
Yes. Could you actually tell cognitive atrophy? How would you define that shortly?
I guess by that I mean decrease in our cognitive abilities, decrease in our, problem-solving ability or logical thinking or creative thinking, all of these cognitive functions that do need practice in order to stay strong.
Yes, thank you. We got a little glimpse of the brain side of this. So now we're going to go to our technology and implementation side, and our expert on that, Kaspar. You are a co-founder of Pactum AI, which is a company that, to my understanding, makes AI agents that companies can use for procurement. So essentially, you've found a way to use AI in an efficient and safe way. That's why I want to ask you, what kind of decisions is AI good at making, and what does it need to be able to make them?
Yeah, welcome everyone from my side as well. And I totally agree with Mona regarding kind of how to use it together with human brain. Like there are ways, like I like the synergy of like calculator at schools. Like you can type in 7 times 8 to see what it is, but we should still learn that 7 times 8 is like 56. It really helps us in the world that we don't need the calculator always to take it out and do these basic math calculations. So and to understand how to use AI, then I think it's easier. Prompting is response or passive usage. Easier to think AI agents as kind of like at the moment like graduate level students. When you would hire all of a sudden, let's say 100 students to your company and just tell them to do something, it will be chaos at the moment. You need to train them like you train humans. You need to kind of set up the system, train about what's your goal of the company, what's the mission, what's the values, how we behave, what's our product strategy, how we do go to market. All of this needs to be fed into this system. And then you need to guide them and train them and give feedback what they're doing wrongly or badly. And then students become very, very useful. Now you can imagine that you have like hundreds of these students almost of zero cost. And if you enable to integrate them into the workforce, then they become massive empowerment for a company. And what these students can then do is they usually can start with these tasks that are easier to start your career path. In procurement, it can be doing some data cleaning, doing some analysis, whether some purchase requisition is filled correctly, whether it's a right commodity item there, it's whether it's right price, whether there are 3 suppliers instead of 1, where there needs to be like 3 suppliers in 1 requisition, whether supplier response is correct. Can I ask quotes from suppliers? All of these tasks that every procurement professional is doing operationally, if you train these, let's say, artificial students to know how to do it, to know what are the guardrails and how to set them up, how to monitor, how to train them, how to improve them, how to track them, then you have a massive empowerment of the organization, and you as procurement professional can be empowered and can be like 100x more productive. So this is how usually in today's level of AI, how these agents can be kind of started. Of course, through time, student masters and eventually becomes more skillful. But today, they are not there yet. Today, we should not kind of perhaps over-mystify about that AI. It still is very basics and doesn't have the basic logic what human level people have.
Can I share a personal story? Because I just recently started using kind of like a personal assistant agent that I gave access to my email, my calendar, my LinkedIn. And what you said about this training phase, it can be actually really annoying because it's like having a really, really eager assistant that doesn't know anything about the world. And it would do stuff like it would book a lunch meeting for me at 9 a.m. And I had to explain, okay, people don't eat lunch at 9. And these very, very basic things. And I got so frustrated with this teaching period that I eventually said, okay, this is like taking up too much of my time. But if I had just pushed through that training period, I would now have a very skilled assistant that I could use 24/7.
Yeah. So would you say that the humans behind using the AI need to have the full picture themselves, and they need to have exact knowledge of what they need this AI agent in this case for?
You need to know what good looks like when you're designing and setting up AI agents into the system. You don't need to know all that yourself by heart. Let's say that in our environment, like let's say in procurement agents, AI agents have access to thousands of pages of policies, like in which country, in which region, in which category, how we need to procure some materials. It's very different. For AI agents, you feed that into it, and all of a sudden they are very smart in that field. Much better than humans, even because we are not capable of like remembering everything by heart. But yes, you need to have access to their systems and monitor and then track and trace and build guardrails around that. And that's the skill that we haven't mastered as humanity yet. We are not even that good with people using that. We hire people and then we fire them because they didn't deliver enough, without realizing how much effort actually you should put into it. But we have some misconception, I would argue, with AI agents that all of a sudden they should know everything.
Yeah. It's easy to give them the knowledge, the information, but it takes more time to train them to know what to do with that information what they have. Would that be?
Yes, and to kind of have safeguards and loops, humans in the loop, because they can go into very negative loop and becomes just very random and stupid very quickly. Like they kind of escalate their stupidness very quickly. So this is how you need to kind of control that have a control mechanism basically built into it.
Yeah. You, Mona, mentioned earlier that this training process that you tried to do, it was annoying, maybe frustrating. Are there some other misconceptions, other things people misunderstand about AI and how they are implemented in workplaces nowadays? Like what's making these things challenging at work for people?
I think most, if we're talking about just a typical end user, probably doesn't even realize how much potential there is in these tools. And I think most users at this point, we're still very early on in the kind of adoption curve. And we have people who are the early adopters and they're very enthusiastic and they've taken all of these new tools on board and they use them very skillfully. And currently they're gaining a huge advantage, kind of without maybe the employer even knowing that these individuals exist in a company. And then we have the majority of people who are still a little bit apprehensive. Maybe they're not too interested in this technology. They're maybe even more scared of what it will do. They're scared that they will be replaced by AI. So they're not really exploring the full potential. There was this report from Anthropic just recently where they showed that most of the users are really not using AI to its full potential, and we're not really seeing the gains that are already available to us with these tools. So I think most people are still quite apprehensive and scared to use this technology.
How about, Kaspar, are there some other misconceptions that you see other than the ones that you've discussed earlier?
When it comes to employment or what is it for humans to do, then I think one misconception definitely is that now there is no job for humans type of thing, because I would argue that yes, there is no job for humans if you don't kind of learn how to use AI properly and make it useful. Then these tasks are not relevant anymore for you. But now, if you have better tools, there are a lot more job to do. Job never is done, as you know. Now you can just do a lot more and give a higher impact. And so, like you said, these people who are afraid of losing their jobs, then I would argue that you're rightly so if you're fighting against the system, because the wave is big. But if you know how to use them, actually, it's a best opportunity for young people even to get jobs. Because if you have tried and if you have opportunity to work with agents, I am definitely today hiring these people who can amplify themselves through agents, not those who have 40 years of experience, but and want to stay on that field.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of emotions involved in this discussion, and especially this idea of you should be scared to lose your job if you don't start using these tools. I understand the rationale behind that, but then I also think, is it conducive to kind of scare people into adopting these tools? Because fear as an emotion, I don't think it's very useful to motivate people. I think we want to excite people and get them curious and interested, because if you're scared, you're trying to move away from something threatening, whereas if you're excited, you're moving towards something promising. So I think that's more of the narrative that I would like to enforce, is that these are potentially really amazing tools. I think we can elevate human intelligence with these tools if we use them correctly. And just getting people more excited, I think, will get them also more motivated to try out and play with these tools. I've helped a lot of my friends use AI, and a lot of them would ask, like, can I ask AI this type of question, or can I ask it to do this or that? And I say, I don't know, just try and see what happens. So people are also a little bit kind of wary of trying them out and not exploring everything that AI can do. So having more of this kind of excited and playful attitude is what I think we need more of.
And what would you say to people who are specifically scared of AI taking jobs? They are thinking, okay, this is actually going to take away all of these jobs. What would you say to those people to help them see the bright side of this?
I would turn it around and say, no, actually AI is going to make you so much more efficient with what you do. It's going to be able to teach you new skills. It's not going to make you useless or obsolete as a worker. In fact, it can make you much more valuable. So I would like to turn it around into this more positive perspective.
Yeah, I would say that, most likely you're right. With this attitude, you will definitely lose your job.
Yeah. So you're leading with fear. Let's prepare 2026.
No, but yes, obviously, we have seen also in Pactum that these things can't come top down. We have, for example, set up AI cloud code, for example, so that everyone voluntarily can start using them. Centrally, what we do, we train them with new skills, and these skills are like access to our information, like roadmaps and processes. Set up new skills, like, if you have a sales meeting and you need preparation, then we rewrite basically the prompts and have access to Salesforce and other accounts. And then basically you don't need to prompt every time with all of these text. It's trained by our central system to do that. And then as a salesperson, for example, I know that I just need to hashtag basically let prep meeting this account, and then it's there. The system is trained. Same with HR, the same with legal. Like, we kind of train each division, and then each person there voluntarily can opt in and start using them. And this actually triggers the usage and people adoption, and people are happy. Versus that, hey, you will lose your job if you don't use it.
Yeah, I would agree that getting people voluntarily interested in these tools is the better option. But then again, okay, how do we achieve that? If someone is really resistant to change, and we see a lot of these types of characters in big organizations, they might feel really apprehensive and resistant to any kind of new technology or change in general. And it's a very human way to react to change is be scared, and we're very uncomfortable with uncertainty and not knowing what our job will look like in a few years from now. So I think it's completely understandable how we see the majority of people reacting. And I think it's a good question. How can you as a leader ignite more of this excitement and this motivation to try these technologies and see what they can do?
Yes.
And at work, kind of in startup environment, it's very hectic, right? So you can't expect someone gives you a lot of time to get rid of your fear. So you have limited hours. But I'm also part of our Prime Minister initiative Estonia.ai, where basically we are training also all Estonians how to use AI. And there, obviously, you need space and you need to give that time, and we'll do trainings and everything. And one way how to do it is just similarly as at work, just share best practice, let humans share their good experiences, how AI was useful to them very practically, and then this is very motivational.
Absolutely, I agree. I think it's not a good idea to, let's say, do an AI tutorial and post it on your internet and say, go look at this when you have time, and kind of leave people alone to try to excite themselves or get themselves motivated, but rather do things together and share good ideas and give demonstrations of how someone has solved a problem using AI. So using this kind of power of numbers and people and feeling like we're in this together, I think is really useful.
Yeah. And here I see you've constantly brought up that we have these people now who are fearful even, don't really know what they're doing, probably already doing something with AI, but it's probably not very productive and efficient. And then we have those early adopters who have gotten this quick kickstart into it. They are already miles ahead of many other people. So do you see that there would be some kind of an inequality or gap that would be growing between these groups of people, and are there some consequences? What happens? What can happen because of this divide?
Yeah, we see the inequality already. It will probably level out as time goes by when the slower adopters also jump on board on this train. So there is that state of inequality now, but hopefully we will be able to narrow that gap in the near future. I also see inequality between, let's say, quick-moving startups that are much more agile. They're able to take these new technologies on board much quicker versus really big, slow organizations that simply don't have the resources or time to do a big kind of strategic overhaul. They don't have time to hold every employee's hand and go through step by step, how do you use AI in your work? So I think the big winners at this moment are the smaller, more flexible companies, even just individual entrepreneurs like myself. I gain a huge advantage because I'm able to do so much more now with these tools. Whereas before I'd have to hire a marketing person and a social media person. I can now do all those things by myself. So I think the big companies are going to, find it much harder to adapt to these really fast changes. Do you agree?
Big in Estonian sense, big companies, when I agree. I agree that individual one-man billion-dollar valuation startup founders are there already, starting to emerge, and they have this beneficial and freelancers kind of ways how they can really empower themselves. When I see global sense big, then I'm not too worried about them either, because our clients in Pactum are from Walmart to Rolls-Royce, and they are very top-down push. They know that they can become 30-40% more efficient, and if they don't, they will be dead in coming years. So and then it's very board level strategy, how to implement AI versus old days where there was some innovation hub somewhere and no one cared about innovation people. Now AI is a bit different. This is actually forced, in a positive way forced, because everyone wins a lot. So yeah, in Estonian government sense, how we are helping and working with the government is to help those who are not like Ericssons of the world, but help those who are somewhere in between, who are still sometimes working on their Excels. They even missed the last wave of software as a service, and now they need to jump to AI. And obviously there is a kind of one thing being afraid, other thing you just don't have skills. And so how we as a government as well can kind of support and show that actually adoption, and it's not that scary, and you can do more than just go to ChatGPT and ask to write an email to you.
Mm. You said something about forced adoption, and in your case you said that this would be a positive forced adoption. Everyone wins a lot. Who are the winners truly, and who would be the losers in this scenario?
Forced meaning that there is budget allocation clearly, with the Fortune 500s of the world, we can see $40-50 million annual budgets just for AI tools, for internal, be it Cloud Code, and for software vendors as well. and this is increasing like 3x at the moment per year. So depending when you as a listener listen to this podcast, it really depends. The world is moving so fast, right? But at the moment, adoption is huge and the budget is there, so everyone can get benefits from that. Who loses? I guess we come back to the same as before, that if the force is so strong on the world for something, then there is no way to fight against that, right? You just need to roll with the wave and see how to become, how to adapt, how to learn, how to use it, and be empowered through that. The previous wave of technology, some managed to, I would argue, fight against that. But I think this force is too strong, and there is no point than just accept the world, whether it's good or bad. We will see, because other forces, be it social media or something, might have been possible to kind of escape. But I believe that this one is not possible.
But can I say one positive thing in relation to this topic of equality? Because one thing that really I've realized quite recently is actually through my partner, who has very clear ADHD, and he's been able to gain a huge advantage from using AI tools because he has certain parts of his cognitive functioning that are really kind of underperforming, and then he has huge difficulties with like completing unmotivating tasks. So he's able to outsource those to AI and actually focus all of his mental power and all of the things that he's super good at, use his own brain for those tasks specifically. So if we talk about something like neuroatypicals, really gaining a huge advantage in this time, I think that's one positive side of this phenomenon.
And it's great that you brought that out, because a common theme here is that in which ways and with which tasks do we use AI so that it's actually helping us and it's not taking away from the jobs that we are doing. There's also an inequality or an ethical question on when companies are now demanding their employees to use AI to become more efficient. Who are the people, or what are the roles in which people are kind of forced to outsource too much of their thinking, and what roles, who are the ones who are able to or even have the privilege to do things without it? Because let's say you're writing a blog with AI, you can do it in a couple of hours, versus someone who is doing investigative journalism, they would be given the time, the days to be able to complete this one article, doing it very hands-on. So what do you think about this side of the inequality or ethics of this?
Yeah, I mean, even in the age of AI, we still need experts, and you cannot become an expert if you outsource your information processing and your thinking to AI. So we still need people to invest their own brain power into doing knowledge work. Unless, or if we don't do that, we will just simply run out of experts. Because we do have these studies showing that if you use AI to draft, or piece together large chunks of information and summarize, you're not going to remember much of what you have actually summarized if you haven't done the thinking work yourself. We also have a study from Stanford last year showing that although people feel more efficient when they're using AI, they actually feel less motivated. Because of course you're going to feel less motivated if you're just simply a secretary to your AI and you're just kind of copy-pasting whatever it tells you to say. So I think we still want to keep people motivated. We want to build people's expertise. We want them to feel like they are valuable. So we want to hold on to these things and not have anyone have the feeling that they're completely outsourceable to AI. So we have to figure out what is the strength of each individual employee and kind of focus on that and make sure that they have time to also cultivate that ability in themselves.
How about Kaspar? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I don't understand how thinking can be lost. Like we talked before, like you don't lose your job, you lose the tasks what you do. So tasks will be different the same way. You don't lose thinking, you just need to do different type of thinking. So and maybe like very practically speaking, that it wouldn't stay very high level. Like I'll bring some examples, because from this year, from the November 2025 models basically onwards, the world changed a lot, because now with Cloud Code, for example, it spread to all the different divisions or job tasks, not only engineering. Engineering was already outsourced to agents a year ago. And so practical examples of, like, for example, if you're an HR person, we at Pactum had salary compensation review, annual review, 160 people, everyone had to have new salary. So all of the summaries of these discussions, stock options discussions, was drafted by AI agents to new contracts, was sent to people for signing. This saved like 3 days of HR person work. Just one task, 3 days again. When you're in salesperson, now the AI agent knows what is your next meeting, automatically gives you all the previous recordings, all the preparation for that meeting, about that person, about that company, how they're doing, what has happened in the last 2 weeks with that company. All of that automatically done for it. So this saves again 3-4 hours per meeting. Maybe I'll just do one more example. Legal, there is obviously very clear, lots of paperwork, redlinings, summaries that can be helped. So that's pretty obvious. Like all of these things, people can save hours per tasks, and eventually these hours become work weeks and years saved. So job or thinking is not changed. Now basically thinking is even more needed, because if your mundane work is done for you, because there is not much thinking to do many tasks what we do today, be it doing 160 PDFs to send for employees. You need to see from Excel what is new stock option, what is new salary, and then you need to create the PDF and then to send an email. That's not thinking work, that's pure execution. Now HR person is doing more thinking and can have these extra 2 days to think how to build, better career maps for these 160 people, and be more useful. So thinking becomes more useful and more needed when mundane execution can be done by agents.
Absolutely. We should outsource all of these mundane tasks to AI. I completely agree. But I'm thinking about this process of building the expert, who is then at the end of the output to kind of assess what AI has produced. So how does that HR expert accrue that expertise by thinking for themselves and having to do also the difficult thinking work? So if we think about students in university right now, for example, if they're writing their essay answers with AI, they're outsourcing this learning process to AI. How are we going to have experts in the future who are going to be able to use these tools then skillfully in the workplace?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm a little bit worried about.
And learning also again from Estonian experience that we have an AI Leap program where we train now all Estonian teachers how to use AI at schools, and clearly the system needs to change, and it has now changed when you as a listener listen to this, is that for example writing essays is not happening anymore at home. One thing is trust, other thing is just that you write them in classrooms. But then how to use AI is you can take a photo of that essay and analyze that and reflect on that and get learnings from that, and then maybe write another piece by yourself. So how to use again the system of our learning process at schools and working process at work just needs to be reviewed and changed and adapted to this new model. But Absolutely. The AI agents are still super useful in essay writing, but just in different ways.
That's a very important point also to highlight, that this is the adoption of AI is a process that happens on multiple different levels and at multiple different ages and stages. Right now, I would love to discuss with you about how this works in education, like what could we do, but we are now focusing, of course, on the workplace and on professionals. You gave a lot of good examples of how to utilize AI in a good way. You both have given good examples of that. But I would like to hear about some examples of how you have seen some people use AI in a very, can I say, brain rot way?
Yeah.
It's like,
AI slop is sometimes also the term, like you give a task to AI and the outcome looks good. Like, for example, just recently I had one senior person during the meeting when we chatted, end of the meeting, sent me a slide about what we discussed and what is the new framework of how to proceed. And I looked at graph, it was beautiful, different pyramids, horizontal lines and vertical lines and new buzz terms and looking, that's brilliant. And it took me like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes and looked and tried to understand what did she mean by this and what that term actually means. And then I Googled that term and I was super confused. And then I asked, "What? Can you explain me this?" And then the person, "Oh, it was AI who listened this and made this graph." And what does it mean? Like she didn't know. And this is the AI slop, right? If you fall into that trap that you just allow AI agent to do something for you, that eventually it's just nonsense and it doesn't save time, it consumes everyone's time.
Yes, I completely agree. And I have very similar experiences. I just had a business partner write a marketing copy for a webinar that we're hosting, and he had sprinkled it with all of these really good looking scientific references and citations. And I thought I would, just in case, I would double check if they make any sense. I saw the first reference, the article had been cited 0 times, which is always a red flag. You do not want to cite that article. The second article had been completely falsely kind of referred to in the text. And then I looked through all the references. They were all gibberish. And I had to ask my business partner, okay, did you maybe use AI to write this? And it was like, yeah, I did. I thought it would save a lot of time. And it looked really convincing on the surface, even to me as a scientist. I said, this looks good. But as soon as you look under the hood and you have any kind of expertise in that field, you realize that you never know if it's really true or not. And I wonder how much of the material that we read now online or LinkedIn posts or blog posts are full of this kind of just brain rot material that looks good on the surface.
And yeah, as leaders, and as individuals, this is a place I like to be like quite strict and forceful and kind of call it out publicly, these cases, that we wouldn't fall into this AI slop trap, basically.
Yeah, and I think we also have psychological studies showing that people tend to over-rely on AI and think that it's in a way more intelligent than it really is. And just reminding people that really it's just a statistical program designed to kind of guess the next word in a sentence is basically what it's doing. It doesn't really have any knowledge of the world, and we still need a person to evaluate the output really, really critically. And I think that's something we need to teach to really young people as well in this day and age, is that you can't trust what AI tells you.
Yeah, could you actually tell more about, maybe Kaspar, about the technology? Like you said, that AI is not actually thinking. Is that a correct statement?
We can go to a discussion what is consciousness also, but it's becoming very difficult. Like what is human brain doing and what we are ourselves to say that who is smart and who is thinking or not thinking. But the way, of course, how AI works is different how our brain works. So the artificial intelligence, which a decade ago or something was still very neuroscience kind of base work, where how we thought that we will replicate our minds. The replication of our intelligence came from quite different angle. It's indeed what's the most likely next character I need to write here, and then what's the next character after that. And when you fed into the AI 10 essays, then it most likely knows the next character that after A and D, most likely it's D and then there's a space. So it's quite good evaluating that there is a term and or word and then I can use and. But most likely all the other copy there would be random. But if you fed into it entire Wikipedia, then it already can start having the next character there a bit better, and it starts to feel, oh, it's smart. It knows all the facts out there in the world. But then when you ask something that is not in Wikipedia, like, I don't know, can you give me a comparison of Hitler and Stalin, if they would live today in today's world, how they would evaluate AI? Then the system wouldn't know what's the next character there. You don't have that knowledge base. Now, if besides Wikipedia, you feed into that even more global text, all the content or discussions, it can then answer that question, how if Shakespeare would live today, how it would react to this. And it can speak like Shakespeare, and it feels intelligence for us. But in reality, it became a bit smarter what's the next character there. So on higher meta level, it starts to conclude, reflect, draw lines and comparisons and evaluate. And now the question is how far the intelligence can go. At the moment, it hasn't reached to the level that it has basic human, how to say, logical reasoning. Because sometimes it's just, you look at this and it's just stupid what it writes, right? But again, it's so rapidly developing. So if this recording is listened a year later, whatever we speak here most likely is total nonsense already. The question is, where is the gap and limit? And at the moment, it does seem that it can become smarter even today if you feed into even more data into it, and very soon it can have higher meta level discussions on ways that even for most humans, it feels that it's more intelligence than human. Having said that, then another situation can happen and it's super stupid again, because the brain of human has evolved through millions of years that has made us creatures somehow different than establishing the next character, even if it's fed into all of the data in the world.
Yeah, but I mean, there are some neurophilosophers who say if it is able to sound and look like a human, what does it matter if it's working in the same way as a human brain or if it has a consciousness or not? And like you said, probably a year from now, we won't be able to tell, and there will be even much more sophisticated language models that we can use. So it's interesting to see what will happen in the future.
Yeah. But with this knowledge that we now have and this understanding of the tool that we are working with, let's dive into the solutions or the good and efficient ways of using it even a little bit more. Earlier, Mona, you talked about thinking first, prompting second. Perhaps would you give some real-life example of how to do this at work, or how the process would look like of you using AI efficiently as a co-thinker to yourself?
Yeah, even just, let's say, like your example, writing a blog post, instead of just starting with a blank page and letting AI do all of the thinking, maybe do the first rough draft yourself, or maybe even do some just kind of rough drawing up of ideas, what you can come up with, and then feed that into AI and give it a prompt, something like, okay, act as a mentor or a co-thinker, or ask me tough questions, or challenge my point of view, and have the discussion with the AI. So this is a much more active way of using AI instead of passively asking it to produce quick and easy answers. So I think that's one really important way to use AI, and really just intentionally introducing mental friction. So not always making things as easy for you as possible, even though that's our natural tendency. We are lazy by nature. We would love to have AI do everything for us, but I think we have to be really intentional with how we use it. And especially when it comes to building our own expertise and our own knowledge of how things work, and getting a bigger picture of things sometimes require that we do the thinking ourselves first.
Yeah, you said we are lazy by nature. Would you like to elaborate on what exactly you mean by that in this context?
If there's an easier way of doing something, we're probably going to figure out what that way is and use it. And that makes complete sense. We want to reserve our energy, be as efficient as possible. So if AI can do something for us faster, we're probably gonna use AI wherever we can.
How about Kaspar?
I think like on two main levels. I think one is the architecture level, is that as a company leader, you need to think through how to build up the architecture, meaning like how do you train new skills of the AI, how do you set cloud code, how to give access to all the systems, how to give access to data. Coming back to an analogy that if you would hire 100 or 1,000 or hundreds of thousands of students, how do you train those students that they would become efficient? So this architecture and system-wise needs to be thought through. And part of that architecture is what is built internally and what is outsourced to vendors, vertical ways. And then basically what tasks will be through phases. Everything is phased approach. What tasks will be given to agents, and what tasks what tasks will be given to humans, basically. And this needs to be a decision-making process there. Like in procurement way, you may say that all the tasks that are today, I don't know, outsourced to India maybe, or today are done by procurement professionals who are evaluating requisitions or contract renewals, who are preparing negotiation arguments, who are asking quotes from suppliers. All of this, let's say, outsourced to Pactum AI, while, let's say, strategic negotiations of expansions with suppliers but done by humans. You draw these lines and you give new tasks to humans and new tasks to agents, and this need to be kind of thought through in work environment.
And I would replicate that if Kaspar is talking about the organizational level, if I bring that to the level of the individual worker, figuring out, okay, should I have different types of agents to do different types of tasks for me? So I can have an agent that's kind of a mentor and a thinking partner. Then I can have an agent that's more of like an intern or an assistant. I have one agent that can do information searches for me. So really figuring out what are the more mundane, annoying, boring, time-consuming tasks and which agents I could outsource those to.
So the ability to build these agents is actually becoming quite a crucial skill, no matter your
It sounds
field.
very difficult how as a normal person can build stuff, but the work and deployment needs to support that. And if it sounds complicated, then what do you do if you don't know? It used to be you Google it. Now you just ask an agent, you ask LLM what to do, and let the agent guide you in these steps, like how to do and what to outsource. So, and if you don't know what to prompt, then ask what to prompt. You know, you just need to learn how, like we used to learn how to Google stuff, that you need to use these symbols if you want a specific term or what to write there. We just need, you need to ask the same AI how to use AI and guide you through this process. Yeah.
How about then in a situation where perhaps the laziness has kicked in and now you've already become used to using it in a certain way and you can kind of start recognizing this laziness in yourself. How do you build that muscle back? You said you didn't like the word muscle, but I think it's a very good analogy in this. Like, how do you build the muscle back?
I would argue that some muscles don't need to be built back again. Let's take another analogy. Let's say home environment. I used to do dishes. Now there is a machine that does dishes. I'm super lazy about doing dishes. And I like to stay lazy about doing dishes. I like the machine to keep doing dishes for me. And I don't want to have that like back to me. So the same way with AI, like it's totally okay to be lazy in some things and keep AI doing that. If you recognize that, that doesn't mean that you don't think, but just we can't go back and we shouldn't go back in like time in these automation steps.
Yeah, I agree. If we're talking about really these more mundane tasks that can be easily replaced with AI, we should use those tools whenever we can to replace those types of really just basic level tasks. But then if I think about the really higher order thinking, like creative thinking or problem solving, I really feel like we want to keep some of that to ourselves as well, even now and then. So not just completely outsourcing that. But I do agree that, for example, coordinating your agents and recognizing how do you need to train these agents is already cognitively demanding in itself and requires problem solving and creative thinking as well.
Yeah, the challenge here comes most likely what with time of this recording has not happened yet. People love, at least in Pactum, those who use agents love it because they are so much more productive. Very soon, what will happen most likely is that this has become a standard, that one person produces 3x outcome. So this is an expectation that you will do it, which means that it's not that you have a Friday off now because you were super productive. Today, you can take Friday off if you use agents and no one notices. But soon you need to be 3x productive and you still work on Fridays, but now you just need to deliver 3x outcome. And that becomes very demanding, I think, that we haven't used to, that we just need to do a lot more work now.
Yeah, things are speeding up, and the same thing seems to happen whenever we have a new technological innovation. We think, okay, this is going to save up so much of people's time, and now we have more time to think and be really calm and really intentional. And then the opposite happens. We're constantly more stressed. We have more work. There's more speed. So I am a little bit worried about this as well, how this will affect people's well-being and their stress levels. We already see them being at an all-time high. So this is something that we really need to look out for.
And especially, I guess then leaders are in a very key position into making sure that the people in their companies are able to use AI in a healthy way and in a way that it's not making them more stressed, but more efficient, which is the intention. Would you have some tips to leaders of like how to promote this healthy use of AI in workplaces?
The tip is again to use AI there. Like AI, it's quite good in psychology. It can be quite good if it's again set up, trained and used. At least in Estonia, like psychologists and these mental support structures are not that built out maybe than in Finland. There is like access to a very high quality support system. Well, even if you have anxiety or something else, it's quite difficult and it's very costly if you take sessions. So the same way the work environment, like AI can help against AI. And help to be there for humans, not to just count on, I don't know, direct manager or HR division, who everyone goes and complains, right? So how to build a system that will be healthy, I think is the second part of 2026 definitely becoming more and more when the expectations are rising.
Yeah, and just a word of warning here, if we have, really terrible cases where we know that when people rely too much for emotional support from AI, it can lead to really bad outcomes. AI can start to reinforce really harmful patterns and lead to really awful outcomes in the end. So we definitely don't want to outsource our mental health support to AI. But I agree with you that it can be kind of a low level mental support system.
Again, with guardrails, like with any other function, right? Guardrails, it's surveillance and kind of understanding what to give and how to give. But what is clear, again, we need to recognize that this force is so strong, you can't stop it.
Yes.
Every child who grows up today uses AI as psychologists. And whether we want it or not, we now need to cope with that and tell them and teach them and ourselves how to use them and how to make most out of this. But the same in workday, that how to use that psychologist agent. That it wouldn't tell you to kill yourself because there's no point in life anymore. It can tell that today, right? So this is how everyone, even if you're HR department, rapidly need to start learning kind of how to use AI agents and make them productive.
And I think one more thing I want to say is that I think the role of mental health is going to become even more important because as we're able to do things faster and faster, it's not always good for us humans. Unfortunately, we do have a mental health. We're not machines. We're not able to just keep producing faster and faster. There is going to be a price. So I think more than ever, leaders now have to pay attention to how people are actually doing in the workplace and how they're feeling and how they're coping with this change. So I think that's going to be an even more important skill set in managers.
And very honest, like I'm struggling it like the space of development and speed is so rapid, also at Pactum, that more and more I feel that I need to go to that island and go to sauna and just get away because it's so speed. So just to keep up of everything, keep up with competitors, keep up with expectation, keep up with everyone, even to understand what they are doing. It's just so rapid development that it's not meant for our human minds to kind of live like that, I think. And if this becomes 24/7, then honestly, it's not the work and life I want to have for a very long time. And I don't know how to escape that, right? Because I'm CEO, I need to kind of run the company, right? But I can't go to sauna every day.
But I think we're getting down to the really kind of the core things and values and what's actually important. And do we want everything to be at, that efficiency is the most important thing? Is there something more valuable, happiness and life satisfaction? And how do we balance these two things is going to be a huge question in this time. And I just have to share an anecdote. I spoke to my grandma. She's 84 years old, and she's always been up to speed with whatever new technology. She uses a laptop and pays for her bills online and all of that, and she's on social media. But then I asked her about artificial intelligence, and she just said, I have no idea what that is. Like, I don't even want to touch that. I don't want to go near it. Like, she has totally given up on even trying to understand what it's about and trying to explain what it is to an 84-year-old. You just see that there's two different worlds that we live in, basically.
Yeah. And great example of how we can be useful for that 84-year-old grandma. My grandma is great-grandma. To my children is 94 at the moment.
Wow.
And she doesn't hear anymore too well. So what the AI is doing is understanding what others are speaking and automatically writing it down, and she can actually read it, what everyone speaks. And super useful. She's part of conversations again. And so these tools can be useful, if we bring them to humans. But going back to the other point, and yes, because we can't say to companies that let's not be that efficient, because then you just die as a company, because there is a company like, let's say, Lovable in Sweden, who brings to this region, let's say, the San Francisco style, working style, where you do your dinner and then you go back to work, right? And this is how you become adding 100 million ARR every month now. Like you just work hard, passionate, and a lot, and even more with AI. So. And otherwise you wouldn't be Lovable. So
yeah, and I wonder what the cost is for these individuals.
Yeah, and at some period of life, as a student, I was drinking almost every second day, still went to school and did my grades. It's okay I argue for some period, but it needs to be a period of life, right? And this is difficult at the moment to me to comprehend kind of how to stay healthy like that. Like AI needs to help me.
I collected a couple of things that you said earlier regarding this, how to integrate AI at the workplace. One of the things that you said is that fear is not a useful motivator. I think that came from Mona. And then the training aspect, doing things together, and sharing aspect, that also came from Kaspar. Those two things are, I feel, very important here. And then making sure that the barriers of trying things are low enough so that people become voluntarily invested into what they are doing, so that the change resistance isn't too strong. Any last anecdotes, small pieces of advice that you would like to add to this list?
I think that's an excellent summary. I think those were the key takeaways. Absolutely.
Well, in that case, I want to say thank you. Thank you so much, Mona and Kaspar. This was so interesting. I hope you also took something away from this and sitting with us here today. Our listeners, please let us know what you thought about the topic, the discussion, the episode as a whole. You can tag us on LinkedIn at Nordic Business Forum so that we can see what you are talking about. I'm Olivia, and on behalf of NBF, I really, really, really want to thank you, and then thank you over there for listening.